My friends, we got new features in Shopify land, and we have deadlines for upgrading to those new features. So, no secret, Shopify should be the best checkout in the world. Certainly, the world's best converting checkout. These are our claims backed by studies. And that checkout, just like the rest of the platform, always getting new features, always getting upgraded. And now we're at a point where there is a considerable upgrade occurring, an upgrade that has a name: Checkout Extensibility. Heck, I don't even know what the name means, but I have someone from Shopify, from the mothership, who is responsible for some of these changes, who can talk us through it, explain it to us. We are joined today by Mr. Michael Elmgreen. How long have you been with Shopify, sir?
I've been at Shopify about 5 years now. Yeah.
5 years? Wow. And what do you do there?
So yeah, I'm a product director for Checkout Extensibility. So my team is responsible for things like the checkout editor, checkout UI extensions, a couple of Shopify functions, and as well as the checkout branding API, which is used for aesthetic customizations of checkout. So a suite of new technologies which will replace checkout.liquid.
Aha. And when was Checkout Extensibility? It's been a while since that was announced. Do you recall when?
Yes, so it was back in February 2022. I think we first announced the developer preview, and then in June of that year, we ended up announcing the deprecation of checkout date for checkout.liquid and the sort of sunset date of August 13, 2024.
Well, let's start with the what. You Checkout Extensibility, it sounds like it's a suite of features.
Yeah, so it's really a suite of capabilities that replaces checkout.liquid for customizing checkout. It includes a handful of different kind of products. The first of which is checkout UI extensions, which is primarily used for adding new content to checkout. So things like new custom fields, upsells, or other types of sort of UI rendering customizations. You've got the checkout editor, which is used for adding and configuring those extensions to checkout. You've got the branding API, which is used for adding aesthetic customizations to checkout. So things like changing the color, styling of the checkout appearance. And then you've also got functions, which are used for customizing the server-side logic of the checkout behavior. And lastly, you've got kind of web pixels extensions, which are used for customer eventing and analytics purposes. So you've got this kind of like basically, suite of different capabilities which all kind of work together to enable a range of different customizations. So that's basically it.
What's the motivation behind developing these new features and moving to checkout extensibility?
Yeah, so really what we wanted to do was create the world's best checkout, the world's best converting checkout with the kind of highest standards. Like, as your listeners know, there's no room for error in checkout. There's no margin for error whatsoever. And checkout.liquid, to your point, was incredibly powerful and very flexible, but it had some limitations that are maybe not immediately apparent. So first of all, you kind of had that frozen, like pinned version of checkout that you would get locked to, and you would never benefit from the optimizations or upgrades that Shopify made to the checkout experience until you went through that upgrade cycle. The upgrade cycle itself required extensive testing and of all of the customizations that you've made to make sure that they were compatible. So I've spoken to agencies or merchants who have maintained these spreadsheets of all the customizations they've made and go through road checking them every time we do an upgrade. You also had some inherent security risks due to the fact that none of the customizations were sandboxed. And so all scripts can kind of have access to the parent window and can also have access to every other customization on the page. And then, so customizations that were maybe provided to you by a third-party vendor, often every time you're installing one of those apps, in terms of into the form of a piece of code that's inserted into the file, you have to be tweaking the CSS to make sure it fit with the branding of the particular shop that you're installing it in. And there's no real non-technical method for installing and configuring those customizations. Like you had to at the very least be able to like or willing to open up the code editor and kind of insert that code in there. Last thing I think there's like a couple of things like we were Shopify is unable to kind of like help with the optimization of the performance of some of those customizations and make sure that they're tied into our data governance control mechanisms, such as our like permissions and privacy system. So a lot of kind of like, I guess maybe not immediately obvious downsides to Checkout.liquid despite its sort of its power. So really like the motivation came from wanting to sort of think outside the box and come up with a new way to build a high performing checkout experience, which limited some of that overhead, like mitigated some of those downsides. And so really like our focus was on three main pillars. The first being conversion, like it has to be low latency, high throughput, high conversion. So we maintain that quality buyer experience and keep the highest possible conversion rate. The second being compliance, like the changing regulatory environment, whether you look at the privacy regulation changes or things like PCI DSS version 4, we want to make that compliance easier, alleviate that burden for merchants. And also maintain, lastly, like the composability of the checkout, so that you could still realize the customizations that you need that are business critical, whether they're ones for enforcing business processes like validation, or customizations intended to improve average order value like upsells or other things. So it was all in all, like kind of just this goal of rebuilding the checkout to ensure that it remained the world's best checkout, but also is like future-proofed and like mitigated some of the downsides that we saw with Checkout.liquid. So that's really where it all began. It all came from kind of that motivation.
There's so much there too.
Yeah.
But before I unpack it, I want to know about the name Checkout Extensibility. It is an interesting name. Any thoughts behind it? Like, why Checkout Extensibility as our name? I would have been like, Checkout 2.0, I don't know, Super Checkout.
Yes. No, good question. I mean, extensible just really means like capable of being extended. And I think as part of our vision, when we were doing that rethink, it was really imagining checkout being extended with functionality built into apps. And so the extensibility of checkout or checkout extensibility was born. Over time, we've actually seen the model that we've applied to checkout now expanded into other parts of the product, like across different surfaces. So we've got like admin extensions, customer account extensions in the POS, and we've got like both client and server-side customization technologies. So we've kind of generalized this now to be like Shopify extensions and make it more holistic. And so that's kind of like where the name came from. Like we did at the at editions.dev, which I know you were at, talk about the fact that we intend to sort of revise the name to being Checkout Extensions over time. But we felt Checkout Extensibility was a good name to sort of encompass the suite of all of the different technologies that are going to replace Checkout.liquid and sort of bring them together under one umbrella.
It sounds very fancy. Certainly, this can't be on all plans. Who is Checkout Extensibility for or available to?
Yeah, so the upgrade process that you're talking about, it really impacts Plus merchants only, because it's those upgrading customizations made to those like in checkout pages, information, payment, shipping, customizations over to Checkout Extensibility. And the reason for like just historically the plan availability of these in checkout customizations to Plus only really stems from a principle, sort of an ethos. I think you talked about a little bit with Harley in your like at editions.dev. So really we try and align the capabilities that a merchant is exposed to with their merchant journey and their merchant kind of maturity level. And so we want to progressively reveal complexity to them over time in the product. And so, merchants at the beginning of their journey are really focused on finding product market fit, maybe scaling their marketing to generate enough scale to sort of survive and thrive. And really, we believe like should really be focused on eking out like additional percentage points of conversion or upsell, AOV points or whatever the case may be, and hopefully can entrust us to handle, providing a great checkout experience for their buyers. But of course, that changes over time as you're kind of reaching scale. You're getting to that place where you've got that predictable revenue, and there's maybe more alpha in making some of those changes. So, and then you're doing things like adding upsells to collect donations, or upsell, cross-sell different products, or other types of bespoke, delivery options and things like that. So that's where kind of the checkout customization really starts to play a true role for these merchants. That being said, outside of this upgrade process, there are some benefits that non-Plus merchants get from extensibility too. So Shopify functions, like you just mentioned scripts earlier. Shopify scripts were previously only available to Plus merchants. Now, non-Plus merchants can use public apps that implement Shopify functions for a range of things to, customize the backend logic of Shopify's checkout engine, including payment and delivery options. They can introduce bundles using the cart transform function, and can also do extra validations using the cart and checkout validation function. We also have post-purchase upsells, which you might be familiar with. They're kind of like an interstitial upsell page that runs right after the initial conversion and before the thank you page. And then, of course, you've got like the customization of the thank you page and order status page as well. So ultimately, like, checkout extensibility is the future of customizing checkout, and I think all merchants get the benefits in some way, shape, or form from these changes. Although the real material upgrade right now is really for Plus merchants.
I didn't realize that functions was available outside of Plus plans.
Yeah, so it's just for public apps, not for custom apps, but yeah,
Okay.
that's available.
And pick one feature. What do you think is like the primary benefit, or maybe even the thing you're most proud of with checkout extensibility?
So, I would say that, first of all, like, apart from all the customization technologies I mentioned, there were some material improvements to the actual like architecture of the checkout platform itself that have been made with checkout extensibility. So we've been able to significantly improve load times, latency, and throughput of the checkout for everyone across the board with checkout extensibility. And that's allowed us to eke out, some great user experience improvements. It's also allowed us to deliver things like the one-page checkout. One-page checkout has, on average, decreased completion times of checkout by about 4 seconds. And for some merchants that have been asking for one-page checkout for like years and years and years, it's a huge win for them. But really, like, I think outside of like kind of those baseline, foundational upgrades that we've made, I'm just really proud of the fact that now you can kind of get all of the customizations that you want to make to your checkout, and make those while still preserving the upgrade safety of the checkout and getting access to the newest features that we've released, like, as soon as they're out. And that's something which has like removed a lot of the headaches that came with checkout.liquid. Not to mention the fact that they all those customizations can now interact with and work with ShopPay. So like in the past, Plus merchants used to face this like kind of impossible choice of, I've got these checkout liquid customizations which might be business critical, but I've also would love my buyers to have an accelerated experience with ShopPay. I have this difficult choice now of like whether I forego the ShopPay experience in favor of my customizations, or forego the customizations in favor of like creating a better accelerated buyer experience. Now you don't have to make that impossible choice, because checkout UI extensions and the customizations that are made to checkout like work in the ShopPay environment and are compatible across both guest and ShopPay. And that makes me really happy, because the conversion benefits that you get from ShopPay are then now also available to you on a customized checkout. And so like I think that those three things are really the things I'm most proud of. It's like the underlying performance upgrades, improvements, the upgrade safety, and like the integration with ShopPay.
I'm glad to hear you pick those three, because those are the three that aren't necessarily obvious, even just using the tools. Like, it's faster, and I don't have to do anything to get it faster. Fabulous. I'm
Yes.
in. I'll take it. Give me the win. And then that improved Shop Pay integration, I'm fully convinced that Shop Pay has a big conversion benefit. It's much less effort to use it, and so I'm glad to see that, because you're right. There was this terrible choice you had to make. It's like, all right, which is the way we're going to optimize this? Now I don't have to go try and figure out the trade-offs here. And security, you're right. If someone's going to put in their most precious 16 digits into your checkout, their credit card number, that requires a lot of trust. And you also, you don't want to be the one who has potentially leaked people's credit card information. And so getting rid of checkout.liquid, that template, does avoid a lot of those problems. It sounds like there's a compliance issue occurring here with a new version of PCI.
Yeah, that's right. So yeah, I highly recommend your listeners take a look at that. Essentially, PCI DSS regulations provide a set of rules that govern how kind of payment information is collected and secured as part of the e-commerce experience. And there's some new rules coming into effect in April of 2025, which have increased the burden on merchants to maintain a secure checkout. And specifically, the big thing there is that the compliance and security requirements they have extend to both the payment page, which is often an iframed component in the checkout, but also to the parent page. And so that's a huge thing, because all of the customizations that previously were injected into checkout.liquid ran on the parent page as well. So if you have to attest to the integrity of all of the customizations made on both the payment and parent page, that's a much higher burden than the PCI DSS rules levied on merchants before. And so we've put out a blog post on this topic, but we believe that extensibility will make compliance with PCI DSS basically, will require nothing from merchants to remain compliant with that when it comes in April. And so that's a huge benefit, and something that I think validates somewhat the kind of approach we've taken here with the change in the way that we're sandboxing and isolating customizations and web pixels and everything else.
Yeah, and regulatory compliance, not the sexiest topic, but so hugely important, right?
Yeah.
Really don't mess around with regulatory compliance. Just go along with it. So always thrilling to have someone else helping to handle it for us. All right, talk to me about timeline. These features are available now, but there's also an upgrade path. There are deadlines. Old features are going away. Walk me through it, knowing full well that this will be dated in a month anyway.
Yeah, sure. So we announced it back in February 2023. Coming up on August 13th, 2024 is the deadline to upgrade from checkout.liquid to checkout extensions for the information, shipping, and payment pages. To avoid, there's a set of restrictions that will be applied after that due to the inherently less secure nature of checkout.liquid versus checkout extensibility, which we just kind of talked about. Then in January, on the 6th of January 2025, we're going to start automatically upgrading shops to checkout extensibility, which will basically strip them of any of the customizations that have been made. And we'll be giving merchants a 30-day heads up on that happening for their shop, starting in early December. We obviously don't want to see any merchants in that position unless they truly didn't need those customizations to begin with. But we have to sunset our older technology in order to maintain that standard. And also in mind of that PCI DSS regulation coming in April. So those are the kind of timelines we're working with. for the in-checkout pages, and then we also have the deadline around the thank you page and order status page, which is kind of August of the following year, 2025, to move away from additional scripts that check out the liquid customizations to those pages as well. So that'll be replacing those same pages with web pixels and UI extensions as well. So yeah, that's kind of what we're looking at in terms of the timelines here.
I have an entirely selfish implementation question for you.
Yeah.
You mentioned that additional scripts where typically people just put in, this is our conversion pixel, and it fires on the order status page. If I publish my new checkout, but I have not published the order status and thank you pages, my additional checkout script still gets nuked, doesn't it?
No, it doesn't. No, you can still run additional scripts if you haven't yet published the thank you page and order status page customizations.
And you mentioned web pixels, which in the front-facing side of Shopify, they call it customer events. The docs say it's important to, this is a quote, it's important to look for a pixel app before adding a custom pixel to ensure you're getting the best, most secure integration experience possible. Tell me why. Why do I want to find... Yeah, I mean, the docs are saying, hey, an app is the right solution, but break it down for me.
Yeah, so I guess like generally, we recommend using a vendor's or partner's official app, because then you get the benefits of like upgrades and support that they're making to their implementation. Like you're always going to get the latest, best possible version of that implementation. It's like their official, it's their official app. The second reason is that the web worker sandbox used by our pixels just leads to faster websites as opposed to the iframe sandbox that's used in custom pixels. It just doesn't perform quite as well. And so like that's really the recommendation, where the recommendation is coming from. I don't actually think there's any difference in the security of those two things. They're both very secure. But it's really about like performance and then just getting the benefits of the app partners like upgrades and like the sort of blessed official implementation. So that's why we always recommend merchants kind of go to that first.
What I just heard was the benefit is convenience, man. And that's what I'm about. I've learned time again, if Shopify tells you, this is how we think you should do this, you make your life easier, do it the way it's recommended, because everything else assumes that you did it in the proper method. Like what tells you this is best practice, go with it, don't fight it.
That would be my general advice for sure. I mean, of course, there's always exceptions. Some merchants have specific needs or certain things that they really like feel like it's must-haves to them that can justify an exception to that rule. But in general, like that would be my advice for sure for most merchants.
If someone is hesitant, they're just like, I'm going to push off this upgrade as long as I can. What advice would you give them?
I just reiterate that like we wouldn't be driving, merchants towards this upgrade if we didn't fundamentally believe it was better for them, their buyers, and like the broader commerce ecosystem, whether you're selling on the internet or you're selling in physical retail. Like it's the right approach. And you're really going to get all of those benefits. You're going to get the benefits of the faster platform, better conversion. You're going to get the security that comes with the checkout process and the customizations being better isolated from the main parent page, which gives you like those compliance benefits as well. And then lastly, you're going to get the benefits of all this like upgrade safety and interoperability that comes from using these more future-proof interfaces for customizing checkout. So I just encourage you to just go and get started. Consult we've got this fantastic customization report that we've added to the admin, which uses some AI technology to take a look at the customizations made in your checkout.liquid file and give you back a sort of like a summary of what we've found.
I've used that now several times. I thought it was cool, but I'm like, there's no way it gets it all. And so every time I check it, I've been comparing it, and it has yet to be wrong. I was really quite impressed.
Oh, that's good to hear. Yeah, I mean, obviously there's no there's no perfect kind of analysis tool when it's using that kind of technology, but we've found it to be quite accurate, and it provides kind of like a summary of customization of all the customizations we've found in your file. By the way, many merchants find things that they forgot about or that they no longer care about and are happy to forego as part of the migration. But it also provides app recommendations or sort of development dev doc kind of recommendations on how to re-implement those customizations, whether they be for UI customizations or things like tracking web pixels and analytics. So I just recommend diving into that and making sure you get on it ahead of the deadlines. And yeah, I guess I would just also thank everyone who's listening who has upgraded or is in the middle of finalizing their upgrade for all of the efforts they've taken and the feedback they've given us along the way on this journey. Like it's been, as you mentioned, like a few years now. We're really psyched about the future, but we're also very appreciative because we know that there's been real work involved for every merchant or every plus merchant who's customized checkout, and the agencies they work with and all of the partners that we rely on in the ecosystem. So we're very appreciative of that.
I can't imagine the number of person hours that went into this. Yeah, quite. You should be proud. Can you share? Do we have any upcoming exciting features, enhancements, announcements we can look forward to?
I think one thing I can share is that if you've taken a look recently at what we announced at the last edition with markets, that's something we're thinking about very carefully for checkout. And so we'd really like to enable you to make market-specific customizations for checkout, so that you can get all the benefits that you've maybe seen in the online store editor when you're looking to customize the experience to B2B or for a particular regional market that you're serving. We'd love to. We want to bring that functionality as well into the checkout editor. And so that's something we're sort of working on right now, and we'll be thinking about. I won't give you a timeline on that one just yet, but yeah, it's something we're looking really closely at as part of the broader markets rollout, which is very exciting.
I'm thrilled to hear it because markets and just context in the theme editor have been incredibly useful for us, both for internationalization and for B2B, especially like hearing, there's potential that we could change the checkout for B2B users. That excites me. That's good to know. So, Michael Elmgreen, thank you so much for taking the time to share this product or these features with us, and let me pick your brain. I appreciate it.
My pleasure, Kurt.
Where should people go to learn more about checkout extensibility, or whatever you want?
Yeah, so I definitely take a look at all of the comms we've sent out recently on the upgrade. If you're a part of the cohort that needs to upgrade, if you want to learn more about checkout extensibility, we've also got a bunch of resources available on the Help Center and on Shopify.dev if you're an agency or developer listener. And yeah, just like dive right in. If you're a plus merchant, get into that customization report that's in the admin, and get working on your upgrade, because there's not much time to go here, and we really want all of you to enjoy the benefits.
And we're my friends, stick around. We're going to talk to some Shopify partners, some other smart folks who have experienced it, lived it, implemented it, and I'm going to pick their brains as well. And so we've got someone here, a Shopify partner, Blake Waldron, who is going to walk us through that and talk to us about his experience with checkout extensibility. And his experience is extensive. Like, for our benefit, brag a little bit. Let's hear about your background.
I'm based in Melbourne, Australia. I'm the head of engineering of an agency called Convert Digital, and also the founder of a checkout extensibility app called Checkout Components. Been working with Shopify for a number of years, but my experience with checkout extensibility actually goes back probably almost close to 2 years, or maybe a little bit more. I was very fortunate enough to lead one of the first checkout extensibility deployments in the world. So I was part of the beta program with a couple of merchants. We launched gander.com which is also a headless build, which was one of the first headless builds on Shopify. And they were a great merchant to go through that experience with.
Tell me about that approach. Tell me about the checkout extensibility, upgrade, migration. Well, what do we call it? Are we migrating to it, upgrading to it?
You could phrase it in either way. So I think what we started to realize from how we best communicate with merchants about it was like, yes, it's another thing that you need to do. Like merchants want to look after their day-to-day. Obviously, they've got features that they want to develop and goals that they want to achieve every quarter. And there was this thing that, was announced. It was like, hey, checkout.liquid, that's where we were. And we want to get to something that's a little bit more customizable. Shopify can upgrade it better. And we want app developers and general developers to be able to make better solutions for checkout. So then we started changing the narrative a little bit and saying to merchants, like, this is a huge opportunity. Because if you remember what checkout.liquid was, it was a little bit of JavaScript, a little bit of CSS. It was kind of everywhere. And, Shopify, one of the big reasons behind the new checkout is they want to make checkout faster. They want to deploy more to it. They want to make it a better product and they want to make it secure. Yeah, absolutely. Like there was a level of PCI compliance that they were going after. And, they couldn't guarantee that when they could allow developers just to add random HTML and JavaScript code into checkouts. With extensibility and the engineering behind that, it's much more contained. If an app developer or any developer makes code that, doesn't execute properly, the extension just doesn't run and it doesn't affect the rest of the checkout. So it's much more stable. So the migration process itself was very interesting. So Shopify, and we worked closely with Shopify in the early days on this as well. Shopify now, or was recently sending out documents saying like, hey, and you see this in the admin too, you've got these modifications in your checkout. This is what you need to focus on. That didn't exist when we were, very early on when extensibility was announced. So we went through this process of going through, and I think at the time, Convert Digital had probably 100 clients in production or so that we were working with, or at least 100 stores, maybe not total clients, but 100 stores that we're working with. So we had to go through every single checkout, identify, what JavaScript was there, what styling was there, what functionality was interacting with, external services. And then for each of those items, we went to the merchant and said, okay, well, what are the must-haves for the migration? What won't we have? Because this is an opportunity as well to trim the fat, so to speak. Like there are decisions that were made in that environment in checkout.liquid, which mightn't be the best solution anymore. So we got to reevaluate the goals of the merchants. And then we went to the fun experience of, okay, checkout extensions, for those who don't know, have to be built in a very particular way. How do we build that? And also, it's such a fast-moving product roadmap. Some of the things that we needed to do weren't available at that point in time that are available today. So it's this ever-evolving piece. But migrations, like because we started so early, like we're shipping, I think, probably 4 or 5 a week. We've got a few left.
What are the things you're typically replacing? Like what's the most common? Hey, there's a piece of JavaScript sitting in the old checkout. This is our replacement. I imagine there's a few very consistent replacements you have to do here.
Styling was one thing. And the branding API that's available now is fantastic because every extension that you add inherits the styling of the branding API. So any app that you install from the Shopify App Store will look how you would want it to look in accordance to your brand, which is great. So all the CSS stuff, we knew that was going to be blown away because you can't just add CSS into checkout extensibility. It's all powered by that branding API setting. So we knew that was going to be an aspect of it. Tracking scripts as well. So some people had Hotjar or GTM, custom GTM implementations in their checkout. We knew that concept of having a block of JavaScript running in checkout wasn't the best way to move forward. And I don't know whose idea it was or who to give the credit to, but Shopify released another product called Web Pixels, or feature called Web Pixels, which basically exists for that sole purpose. So developers can create custom pixels which can be installed now either on the storefront or in the checkout exclusively to handle that tracking. So if you're an agency developer like myself, you can create those bespoke for merchants, pending, whatever requirements they have, or there's apps that you can install as well. So yeah, branding, any analytic based tools, and then some content stuff as well. So like, having a banner, displaying important information, and whatnot. But interestingly, one of the things that I've seen with checkout components is the value of having upsells. Like that wasn't something that was possible with Checkout.Liquid. And if you look at a number of different apps that are on the App Store now, a lot of them are utilizing upsells. And like just by having upsells in checkout actually has a considerable lift on average order value, which I was quite surprised to see, but it makes sense.
Yeah, if you've got the right offer, but yeah, certainly that like that cross-sell offer in the order summary or as part of the cart display or checkout display definitely helps raise AOV. You're talking about web pixels. It's similar to a part of, how is that different than customer events?
Customer events is the terminology that's used in the Shopify admin. So if you go to the settings, you can see customer events. What you see in customer events, that actually is the code that you would create there, or any app that you would install, which would appear under customer events. They're actually technically called pixels.
We've done the checkout extensibility upgrades, and our experience is similar to yours. Early on was tougher, just you didn't necessarily have as many options. Now it's easier. There's more options out there to find replacements that have, or apps that support checkout extensibility. I think I'm on the right track here.
A lot of the migrations that we were working with at the time, they were put in a halted state. We had to wait for that third party to come up with an extensibility offering. And I feel like probably the last 3 months is when a lot of the stragglers have finally, arrived at the station, so to speak. So we've been able to move forward. But yeah, I think, if you've got a product and you want to integrate with Shopify, and your business is checkout, or you have something to do in checkout, like you need to have an extensibility option. Like that's a non-negotiable. So it's good to see that there's more out there, for sure. But yeah, definitely in the early days, it was kind of like, well, we can't migrate that merchant yet because, they're married to this. They can't not use that.
Like you said, suddenly as we got closer to it, that deadline, a lot more apps started supporting it. So good, life gets easier. And I want to talk about checkout components. Your app, what is checkout components? How does that work with checkout extensibility?
I was very fortunate because, as I mentioned, I was able to participate in the closed beta of checkout extensibility. And it was actually Gander, the merchant, that said, hey, we want upsells in our checkout. And they use a search and merch platform called SearchSpring. And like at Convert Digital, from an agency perspective, we're a big believer in, if you're already using something in part of your tech stack, try and use it everywhere. Like, get every outcome possible from, the merchant paying for some sort of third-party service, So if they're using SearchSpring to power recommendations on the product page or cart page and the collection pages, and they do upsells, well, let's try and get the upsells in checkout. And they were like, yep, we want it. How do we do it? So we built this one-off extension for them. We got it live. It was very exciting to see. I was like, this is interesting. Maybe this could be a fun play. So I started building checkout components, and all it did was upsells, and that was the only piece of it. And then I realized, as we started talking to more and more merchants, upsells weren't for everyone. As you said before, it's like it's really got to suit the vertical that you're in and the types of products that you sell. And like the data that I've got from the merchants that are using the app now, it's like there are definitely verticals in fashion that outperform from an upsell perspective versus someone who's doing food or car parts or something like that. But the one consistent theme was, we want to have banners show on this specific type of cart or this type of customer, and we want to have additional input fields which are easily mapped to meta fields on the order or attributes on the order. And I was like, well, this keeps popping up. So I went, okay, well, I'll build something for that too. And extensibility is such a great area from an app development perspective because every merchant's got different requirements. So it's kind of like, if there's a couple of merchants that are wanting the same thing, it's like, okay, well, that's a new feature. I'll build that out. So checkout components, I guess, short and sweet of it, is basically an app where you can add content, and there's over 20 different templates. So one of the things that I think that's really kicked the products into gear is being able to integrate with Algolia Recommend, SearchSpring, Nosto, working on Insider at the moment, and Constructor. That seems to be, where a lot of the merchants are coming from. So it's effectively a no-code checkout extender.
It's got great reviews, which no easy feat. Thank you so much for sharing the checkout extensibility experience with us, and checkout components, which looks really good. Where could folks go to learn more about you?
Well, I'm on LinkedIn, so if you search my name, I'll pop up. So feel free to reach out, and if you have any migrations or anything like that you want to run, reach out to Convert Digital. We'll give you a hand.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time. All right, I've got Brett Fish here, who has direct hands-on experience with dealing with what happens when you implement checkout extensibility. Brett, so tell me, what do you do?
My firm is Tag Hero, and so we specialize in, we call it tech support for digital marketing. All the tagging, tracking, pixels, APIs, backend stuff that makes all these digital marketing platforms work. We've been pretty busy with the Shopify Checkout Extensibility issues and migration.
I had no idea that such a service existed. I keep a list of things that I don't love doing and people who are much better than me at it that I can refer them to. And
Sure.
so under data layer troubleshooting, you just got yourself added.
Hey, excellent.
Beyond just I set up my checkout, because checkout extensibility, like actually setting up the checkout itself, is very easy. It works like the theme editor, and then I click publish. There's nothing scary about that part. Once I implement it, though, some things have to change.
I can tell you, like, from the lens of, let's say, a store owner or a marketer agency working with a store, what happens. So a lot of brands and stores use that section for Google Ads conversion tracking snippets. If they're using Google Tag Manager, they'll have their Google Tag Manager snippet. That field is really a way to add anything to that final order confirmation page, which is where you track a lot of your purchase conversions. So anything in that section goes away as part of this change.
So
Yep.
What do I do? Where does my conversion tracking go now?
Where this all goes is Shopify has introduced a new section in your settings that says, it's called customer events. And when you click into customer events, you will then see a list. So for example, if you're using that Facebook and Instagram app for tracking, in the list of the customer events assets, you will see the app there, and there'll be like a green check next to it, like, good to go. What we recommend and what we've been putting in place for clients is that under customer events, and any of those snippets that were in that section in your checkout settings, we recommend moving those to Google Tag Manager. That's kind of like a best practice anyway, if you're not using an app or an integration for tracking, as opposed to kind of hacking in individual scripts. We recommend running those through Google Tag Manager, and then creating a Google Tag Manager, what they call a custom pixel now in their customer events section, creating a Google Tag Manager pixel there, dropping some code in, and then running all those scripts out of Google Tag Manager. If they've only been in that checkout order confirmation scripts, you're only firing them browser side anyway. It's just like they would come from Google Tag Manager. So that's what we recommend. And Shopify actually has a help article that goes through how to set up and implement GTM through this new structure through the customer events section. In that Shopify help doc, they do provide you some example code that you can use to push all the events of the funnel in the store to the data layer and then be able to pass some stuff. But one of the notable things that's missing is there's no product data in that sample code that they shared. So like for Meta or Google or some of the platforms where you want to send back product data with like a purchase event, that's not there. And so it took some tweaking and hacking and finessing to get that to work the way we wanted. But yeah, it's definitely not like super straightforward and easy, but that's how it's being done now. And we recommend any of those kind of one-off, like you mentioned, like you drop a script in for something specific, we recommend doing all those through Google Tag Manager, which is kind of best practice anyway. But that's kind of the prescribed path that Shopify has presented as how they want that done, as opposed to dropping in all these individual snippets as custom pixels in Shopify. Is kind of consolidating that and streamlining that and doing that through Google Tag Manager.
The larger reasons for all of this is like it's more performant, you have more control over it. It's going to be better for privacy rights, like when people opt out of cookies, all that stuff.
Right.
So there's good reasons to do it.
Right.
We have to do it, but it's work to be done. Instead, I should use an app where possible, like Meta and Facebook. Or Meta and Instagram. The Meta channel, Facebook and Instagram. What do we officially call this thing?
Yeah.
That channel. They've got a channel to plug in. There's the Google and YouTube channel will pop in, but that doesn't load GTM necessarily.
Right.
Yeah.
That
Is there
app
any
will
way to just have it
do GA4, and there's an option to do Google Ads conversions as well. It does not load Google Tag Manager though. So if you had Tag Manager installed on that order confirmation page and had scripts firing via GTM, it won't do that. You'll have to go through that process we were talking about setting that up through customer events. The other thing is that there's some brands and stores that, for a multitude of reasons, can't necessarily use apps or don't use apps. They have a lot of, those apps are very good for just pure out of the box. Like you view a product, you add it to cart, and you purchase and check out. But anything outside of those kind of out of the box e-com functions aren't available. So there's a lot of brands and stores that don't use the apps and use more custom applications that would have to do this as well as part of the process.
So really, it sounds to me like if I want the most flexibility, I think the right way to do this is use that Shopify customer events feature to directly implement Google Tag Manager, and then I could just load everything I need through Tag Manager, assuming it is set up properly in customer events. And there's like one big difficult step I have to do here. But once I get past that, then, I'm just messing with GTM like I'm used to. Not that GTM is particularly, it's like moderately painful. Documented.
Moderately painful is a great way to put it. There's two things on that. Number one is, this should only impact your lower funnel events, like maybe an initiate checkout event and a purchase event. So if you have a current data layer in place on your site and you're already tracking like product detail page views and add to carts and things like that, this should not impact those things. It would be primarily focused on especially the most valuable usually is the purchase, like a purchase conversion. So that's part of it. You'd want to implement it via GTM. Then the other nice thing is with the code, even that sample code they do provide in that help article that you can use, they give you code that does push a lot of great things. So you get all like the event ID and session data. You get like on a purchase event, you get all the user PII that like Meta uses for advanced matching and Google uses for enhanced conversions. All of that is pushed into the data layer as part of that code. The one thing that's really was missing was the product data, and we had to do some finagling to get that to work. But all of those things can be fairly easily, if you're familiar with GTM or watch some tutorials, you can pretty easily pull all that data into your GTM tag. So there is some like sunshine through the clouds as far as like what's there and what's available to you. But yeah, once you do some of that finagling, there are some like decent things in place for it, but it takes a little wrangling to get it to all work.
Do you have a resource for this where it's like just plug in your variables and go? And if you don't, I just gave you there's your SEO strategy for the week.
We collaborated with some other people who are working on this as well. We were all kind of trying to figure it out at the same time because it kind of hit all of a sudden. We do have a resource on it right now. That's like a proprietary thing that we built, but maybe we'll put it out there for SEO and get it up and have it be something that's like downloadable through our site or something like that.
Or sell it to me as digital download templates, $40. Just make my life easy. And then it's like 100% profit.
I like that.
Yeah.
We might have to do that.
I'm just full of brilliant ideas.
This is all, and to your point, this is all so new. Like we're not talking, I gave a presentation on this for the first time, I think at the beginning of June. So, I mean, it really hasn't been, and that was like right at the beginning of what we were seeing. It's only been like maybe 6 weeks of like figuring this out. So this is still fairly like new, cutting edge. And we're seeing it more and more as people are getting these notifications and prompts from Shopify to upgrade. Shameless plug, we do offer migration. So we do offer a service that we built recently where we'll take care of all the Shopify side stuff. We'll get the code in. We'll go into your Google Tag Manager if that needs to be configured, whatever, we'll get all the tags and triggers in place for this so it works for you. So we do offer that as a service. We're glad to help. But hopefully the conversation and some of the other resources, if you're savvy enough, you can do it DIY, but we're here to help if you get stuck.
I feel a lot more confident than I did before, having been able to talk it through with somebody. So
Sure.
thank you.
Awesome.
What's
Yeah.
your website? If I'm like, look, I don't want to deal with it, I just want to hire Brett.
Taghero.io is our URL. And my email is Brett, BRETT, at taghero.io. So feel free to drop us a note through the website or me directly. We have a form on the website, and we'd be glad to help.
Taghero.io. Thank you, Brett. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks, Kurt.